before we get into today's episode, I want to share a really valuable free resource that I have available for you. It is my Kids Gut Health ebook. This ebook has been downloaded thousands and thousands of times, and we have had such great feedback from people about it. And it really is my simple step-by-step guide to improving your child's gut health. In the ebook, you'll discover how your kids' behaviour, fussy eating, immunity, and allergies are related to their gut health and what you can do to improve these areas. My simple 3-step process to heal your child's gut and optimise their digestive function. And I also uncover the 7 common foods and environmental factors that are destroying your kids' gut health that you want to be aware of. So to download the Kids Gut Health ebook, you can go to naturalsuperkids.com/kids-gut-health-ebook, or head on over to the show notes and you'll be able to click on the link really easily. Welcome to the Natural Super Kids podcast, where you will discover practical strategies to inspire you to boost the health and nutrition of your kids. I'm Jessica Donovan, a qualified naturopath specialising in kids' health, and I want to make it as easy as possible for you to raise healthy and happy kids. Let's get into it. Hello. Welcome to the Natural Super Kids podcast. Jessica Donovan here. I'm excited to dive into this topic with you today. It's another gut health topic. Surprise, surprise. We talk about gut health a lot on this podcast. And I can't believe we haven't specifically done an episode on leaky gut before. That's what we're going to be talking about today. And there's sort of a lot to cover in leaky gut. There's a lot of confusion. There's a lot of conflicting information. You'll hear a lot of naturopaths, alternative complementary health practitioners talking about leaky gut. If you've ever tried to bring up leaky gut with your doctor, chances are they won't know anything about it. They might say it doesn't exist, it's not a thing. And so it can lead to a lot of confusion. So I want to give you the lowdown on leaky gut. We're going to be talking about what it is exactly, some of the signs and symptoms that your child might have leaky gut, some of the factors that contribute to leaky gut developing in the first place, and some of the things that you can do to heal your child's gut. The thing that makes it quite confusing is that there isn't a definitive test for leaky gut. There's not a test that we can do and say, yes, you have leaky gut, no, you don't have leaky gut. There are definitely tests that indicate whether it might be an issue. For example, the gut microbiome test that we regularly refer clients for here at Natural Super Kids, there are definitely some markers that can point to leaky gut. But because there's not a definitive test, I think that adds to the confusion and why a lot of GPs, doctors, medical health practitioners might dismiss it all together. Leaky gut is also known as intestinal permeability. And there is a lot of solid scientific research talking about leaky gut, and probably talking about it in the words of intestinal permeability. And so if you look up intestinal permeability, you will be sure to find a lot of really solid information and also, lots of research that talks about leaky gut and some of the effects that it can have on a person's health and some of the things that contribute to leaky gut. So put really simply, leaky gut is when the lining of the digestive tract becomes leaky, as the name suggests. So what this does is it allows undigested food particles as well as toxins and bacteria to leak through from the gut into the bloodstream. And this sets off an immune response. It sets off inflammation. And so it can be a big problem for a child's overall health and well-being. So let's think about that that lining of the digestive tract, the intestinal wall, it's very fragile. It is the same thickness as our eyelids. So, you can sort of get a sense for how, fragile and at risk it can be for things to go wrong with tissue that is that thin and that has matter kind of moving through it all day, every day. The cells of the intestinal wall are a little bit like bricks and mortar. So the mortar holds the cells together and keeps them tight. And when the lining is damaged, and that can be for various different reasons that we're going to talk about, the mortar between the bricks within that very thin layer of cells loosens, and it allows things to leak through to the other side. And so these particles that should be contained within the gut are leaking through into the bloodstream. Like I said, undigested food, toxins, bacteria. And when that happens and the body doesn't recognize that substance as being allowed in the body, the immune system puts the body on high alert that there are invaders, and that's what sets off that inflammation. So leaky gut is a factor in a lot of chronic health issues, a lot of autoimmune conditions, inflammatory bowel conditions, and things that we commonly see in kids: allergies, asthma, eczema, those sorts of things. But it's a bit of a mystery in terms of, does the leaky gut come first, or do those conditions sort of predispose a person to leaky gut? It's almost like, what comes first, the chicken or the egg? And we also know that leaky gut or intestinal permeability is common in people that have been diagnosed autistic and with ADHD as well. So as I said, there's currently no reliable testing for leaky gut, which makes it a little tricky to figure out whether your child has this issue or not. So let's talk about some of the signs and symptoms of leaky gut in kids. And this is very relevant to adults as well. So the first one is food intolerances and sensitivities. This is a common red flag whenever us as practitioners here at Natural Super Kids are hearing from a parent that a child seems to be reacting and sensitive to more and more and more foods. That's a hint for us that the gut is probably leaky and particles of food are leaking through into the bloodstream, and then the body is seeing that particle of food as a problem. And so next time the person eats it, it's going to cause a problem over and over and over again. So this is where a lot of food intolerances and sensitivities can develop. And when we heal the gut, magically, those sensitivities and intolerances aren't there. It's not the only factor, obviously, in intolerances and sensitivities, but it is a big factor. So if your child is sensitive, reactive, intolerant to foods, or you think they are, that could be a sign that they do have leaky gut or intestinal permeability. Another, I guess, group of signs and symptoms are digestive symptoms: bloating, pain, discomfort, constipation, diarrhea, loose bowels. These are all really common when someone has leaky gut. Skin conditions are another common symptom. When we think about it, the gut is a key area of elimination, and so is the skin. The skin is an area where we eliminate toxins and things that we don't need in our body as well. So if the gut isn't working optimally, then the skin will kind of pick up the slack, if you like, and release more toxins from the body, because the toxins need to be getting out somehow. And if the gut, if there's, say, for example, there's constipation and a person isn't eliminating well through their bowel, then there's more to eliminate through the skin. And so skin conditions such as eczema, acne, rashes can be a sign that the gut is leaky or needs some attention as well. Then there are mood imbalances. So, of course, these are common in kids: cranky, irritable behavior, mood imbalances, anxiety, depression, I've talked about this a lot on the podcast, that gut-brain connection. So we know that the gut and brain are closely linked, and the gut produces many of our feel-good brain chemicals. So if the gut isn't functioning correctly, and or if there's leaky gut, the mood can be affected. Mood and behavior can be affected. So we want to be thinking about that and how that might link to someone having leaky gut. And generally, when there are mood imbalances, there are often also digestive symptoms. And when we put those things together, we can start to see that full picture of what might be going on for a child. Autoimmune conditions. Now, these aren't super common in kids, but they are getting more and more common, unfortunately. So, autoimmune conditions, it's an umbrella term for lots of different conditions where the immune system basically starts attacking the body. So, for example, Hashimoto's is a really common autoimmune condition that affects the thyroid. Celiac disease is an autoimmune condition that obviously affects the gut. Rheumatoid arthritis is an autoimmune condition that affects the joints. And there are more and more and more and more autoimmune conditions. But when there are autoimmune conditions, there's often gut issues and leaky gut present as well. And then there's this interesting link between, the big five childhood conditions, as we sort of refer to them as eczema, asthma, allergies, autism, ADHD. There has been some research to suggest that all of these big five conditions have links to leaky gut in kids. So just because your child is diagnosed autistic doesn't necessarily mean they have leaky gut, but it is one of the, if your child has one of those five big childhood conditions that I just listed, you want to give their gut a little bit more attention and take notice of some of these signs and symptoms, because leaky gut is more common in kids with eczema, asthma, allergies, ADHD, and autism as well. So that's an interesting link. And I know lots of listeners will have kids that fall into that category of having one of those five, diagnoses for their child. So again, like when I run through those signs and symptoms, it can still be pretty tricky to pinpoint whether your child has, leaky gut or issues with leaky gut. And the gut wall and the health of the gut lining is something we want to continually support and work on with all kids. It's really important that gut lining is healthy and solid. Those signs and symptoms that I just sort of listed out are, red flags that leaky gut could be present. So let's talk about why kids get leaky gut in the first place. Why is their gut leaky or this intestinal permeability present? There are so many factors that contribute to the development of leaky gut in kids. There is some evidence that suggests that certain people are genetically predisposed to gut health issues such as leaky gut, but the majority of factors are diet and lifestyle related. So let's talk about diet first. Diet obviously is a huge contributor to leaky gut. The food that our kids eat is moving through their gut and having an effect on the health of their gut. There are foods that can directly damage the gut wall, as well as foods that can lead to inflammation. There's also nutrients lacking from an average child's diet that protect the gut lining. And when they're lacking from the diet, that can lead to issues in the health of that gut lining. So let's talk about some of the problematic foods when it comes to leaky gut. Sugar, of course, processed foods, refined foods, wheat and gluten can be problematic as well. So, we know that wheat and gluten can be sort of abrasive to the gut lining, particularly for people who are predisposed to gut issues. There can also be issues with foods that you might be intolerant or sensitive to. So consuming foods that you are intolerant or sensitive to can increase inflammation in the gut, throw out the balance of good bacteria, and leave that gut lining vulnerable. When it comes to those protective nutrients that are needed to keep that gut lining healthy, one of the most important is fiber. And fiber is, as I've talked about in I think it was last week's episode, we did a whole episode on fiber. I'll make sure that is linked in the show notes if you missed that. But healthy bacteria within the gut microbiome feed on fiber. And when the good bacteria are breaking down that fiber, it produces a substance called short-chain fatty acids. We're getting a bit technical here. So those short-chain fatty acids, and butyrate is one example of a short-chain fatty acid, it's like an energy source for the cells of the gut lining, and it also has anti-inflammatory effects. So when our kids aren't eating enough fiber, the healthy bacteria in the gut doesn't have anything to consume. And so the short-chain fatty acids aren't produced. And even worse is that the gut bacteria, the beneficial bacteria, need fuel. They need something to eat. And so they start to consume the healthy mucus layer of the gut. And that leaves the gut lining vulnerable to damage as well. So fiber is so important when it comes to keeping that gut wall nice and healthy. There are also other nutrients, zinc, glutamine, vitamin A, to name a few, that are important for a nice, healthy gut lining. So really we want to come back to, more whole foods, that Mediterranean style diet, lots of fresh fruits and vegetables and whole grains and nuts and seeds, and less processed food, refined food, sugar. We often think about, the fact that, for example, sugar is bad for our kids, but what we also maybe miss is that when our kids are eating a lot of sugar and processed food, there's less room in their diet for those more nourishing fiber-rich foods. And on fiber, we don't need to look for those high in fiber boxes of food that might catch our attention after listening to this in the supermarket. We want to focus on more whole foods, fruits, vegetables, legumes such as lentils and chickpeas and black beans and kidney beans, and whole grains such as rye and quinoa. And spelt. Those sorts of things are nice and high in fiber as well. So let's talk about some of the lifestyle factors that can contribute to leaky gut now. So just to name a few, medications are a big one. So things like antibiotics, steroid medications, antacids, they affect the microbiome, the health of the microbiome, and leave the gut lining exposed to damage. Now, that doesn't mean we should never give our kids any of these medications. Of course it doesn't. But what it does mean is we need to take extra good care of their gut health and extra good care of the health of that gut lining if our kids are regularly taking these kinds of medications. Toxins and chemicals can also contribute. So things like alcohol, which isn't relevant for kids, hopefully, but things like antibacterial products, pesticides, preservatives, which deplete the healthy bacteria in the gut microbiome, can also have an impact and contribute to leaky gut. And the third one is stress. Now, I know a lot of us adults think, well, what has my kid got to be stressed about? They are served on, they're waited on hand and foot. But kids these days do have a lot of stress. They have busy schedules. They have a lot of extracurricular activities. They've got, technology and friendship things to deal with. And so anything that can be causing our kids stress can be also contributing to leaky gut and gut issues as well. So how do we heal the gut and heal leaky gut? So we want to be working with a practitioner if our kids have got some of these signs and symptoms, because we want to be making sure that we are I guess, taking supplements and making diet and lifestyle changes that are going to be most helpful for that individual child. But I can give you some general recommendations here for sure. So the first one is we want to try and reduce some of those problematic factors that we talked about. The sugar, the excess wheat or gluten in the diet, some of those lifestyle factors, exposure to different toxins and chemicals. But definitely a good place to start is the diet and, starting to reduce the amount of sugary, processed, refined foods and start to increase the amount of things like whole grains, legumes, fruits, and vegetables. And look, I know this is a hard change to make for a lot of kids. You don't have to do it all overnight. Just start to make slow changes. So, for example, you might change over some of your processed wheat crackers that your kids are consuming regularly to a more whole grain cracker option, as an example of a simple switch that you could make. You also want to look at identifying and eliminating any foods that might be causing inflammation for a particular child. And so, you want to be like taking a diet diary if your kids are reactive and sensitive to foods, but getting the help from a practitioner that is knowledgeable in this area is really important. And our practitioners here at Natural Super Kids can definitely help. I'll make sure the link to all of the details of our consultations, which are held all online, are in the show notes. Don't try and be eliminating food from your kids' diet without support and the help of a practitioner, because one, you might be doing it unnecessarily, and two, it's a lot of effort, to, for example, remove gluten from a child's diet or remove dairy from a child's diet if they're causing issues in a particular child. And so getting support and guidance is going to make it so much easier for you. Now, the next thing after sort of looking at some of those problematic factors and trying to reduce or eliminate them is to think about starting to optimize the health of your child's gut. And so for this, I recommend that we look at a seed and feed approach for the gut. So we want to be seeding with good bacteria. We can do that through fermented foods. We can do that through probiotic supplements, for example. But we also want to be feeding those good healthy bugs with fiber, with prebiotic fiber particularly. And as I said, prebiotic fibers we can find in whole grains, in fruits and vegetables and legumes. And so we want to be making sure we're taking that two-step approach, not just giving our kids a probiotic and thinking that is done for their gut health. We need to be making sure those healthy bacteria are being fed with good quality fiber in the diet. We can also, this is especially relevant for fussy kids, we can also add in some easy to take prebiotic supplements for kids. But again, when it comes to specific probiotics and specific prebiotics that are going to be good for a good fit for a particular child, it's definitely best to get some professional support with that. We do have our Kids Gut Health ebook. It's totally free. This will give you some really practical ideas on this seed and feed approach and how to, get more of that beneficial bacteria and get more of the fiber into your kids. So you can head on over to the show notes to find the link to download our free Kids Gut Health ebook if you're interested in learning more. So the last piece of the puzzle is we need to be repairing that gut lining. If it's leaky, if it's been damaged, we need to repair that damage. And we can use, there's so many things that we have in our naturopathic tool belt that can support that repair of the lining of the gut. Now, when we're seeding and feeding and our beneficial bacteria are gobbling up that nice fiber that our kids are eating, that's going to be doing some repair right there, because those short chain fatty acids are going to be produced and they nourish and repair the gut lining. We can also support that gut lining repair with nutrients such as zinc and glutamine. Collagen is another good option, and collagen is found in bone broth, which is really easy to add into your kids' diet. So you can definitely start with some of those things. There are many more herbs and nutrients that can help to rebuild that mucus layer if that's been sort of affected, restore balance and repair the lining. But this is very individual, and again, a practitioner can help walk you through this. So I hope that's given you some really helpful information on leaky gut in kids, whether your child might have a problem with leaky gut, what might have caused or contributed to that leaky gut, and then some, ideas of where to start to approach leaky gut from a naturopathic perspective. And this is just one of the many things that we can support you with here at Natural Super Kids. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. I'd love to hear from you. If something has resonated with you, please let me know. You can reach out to me on Instagram at Natural Super Kids, or you can email me directly, jessica@naturalsuperkids.com. I love to hear from our podcast listeners. I hope you have a great day. Thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today. Head on over to our website, naturalsuperkids.com, for the show notes for this episode, as well as a whole heap of inspiration to help you raise healthy and happy kids. I'll see you next week.